In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace your intermediate steering shaft on this Ford F-150. This one is basically the lower one that connects the steering rack up to the other steering shaft that goes inside through the firewall. Let's get started. First, tie off the steering wheel before you start the job so that it can't turn, otherwise it will damage the clock spring if it turns without the steering shaft connected. I'm using a bungee cord and just hooking it underneath the seat. If you want to, you can use the seat belt and loop that around. But there we go. Now it can do a bunch of turns. Obviously, it can still move, which you do want, but it can't turn around more than one full rotation. You'll notice I tied it off at an angle, and that's because from this particular position, I can actually get to the steering shaft bolt much easier, which you'll see in a little bit. If you tie it straight, you might not get to it as easy, but of course you can always untie it, adjust, and reposition the steering wheel. So if you look through the fender liner, you'll see the 13mm pinch bolt that holds the steering shaft, the top of the steering shaft U-joint, onto the other steering shaft that goes into the truck through the firewall. Now you may need to turn the steering wheel left or right depending on how yours is already positioned, and that will give you better access to that bolt. Let's break this free. I already sprayed it with a bunch of rust penetrant. There we go. A lot of times it doesn't break free, and sometimes it even requires heat and more rust penetrant, but there it is. Take this out. I'm going to try the air chisel. Sometimes that works a little bit better just because of extra vibrations. Yep, looks like that broke it free. And, well, there you go. That just pulled right off. Now if you look underneath the front driver's side of the vehicle, right where the control arm is, look above the frame towards your oil filter, keep going, and you'll see the bottom of the steering shaft where it connects onto the steering rack. Now, if you turn the wheels, either direction, whatever works for you, that should turn the steering shaft so the bolt faces out towards you. Looks like I have to go a little more. Right there. And now I can see the bolt clearly right here, and I can get my extension with a 10mm socket on the end of it. This is a 10mm bolt. It's smaller than the other one. And I have an air impact that fits in here, but you can also do this by hand. And take this bolt off. From underneath, you can somewhat reach it. Okay, there it is. And now you'll have to find just the right angle to tap it with a pry bar so you can actually slide it up and off of the power steering rack. I'm going to stick my pry bar in here and hit it with a hammer. Oh, there we go. Out it comes. You can try to grab it from down here now and slide it straight out. If you can't, you're going to have to go through the fender well up top, but looks like I can get it here. There it is. There's the old steering shaft. So now I want to clean up the shaft that comes out of the power steering rack. I'm just going to use some very fine emery cloth because I don't want to damage it. Unfortunately, I can't get any sort of wire wheel, wire brush in here. So I'm going to clean it up the best I can with this. I just want to remove some of this rust that has built up here so that the new shaft can slide on easily, especially right here where the bolt goes through. And before I put on the new shaft, I'm going to cover this with anti-seize. You can also use grease, whatever you have really that'll prevent corrosion. It's a good idea to do that since it's out in the open. You don't want it to rust again. So, all right, there we go. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's never going to look like new again. Now I'm going to take a rag with some brake parts cleaner on it and just wipe off any debris that is on here. There we go. right. Now I'm going to grab some anti-seize. If you have the brushed kind, that's best because you can directly apply it here. And just lather it on. There we go. Spread it around. Now take your new steering shaft and slide it in. Make sure it follows the same path so that you don't have to struggle later. Try to slide it upwards. Okay, there we go. And when you put it on, notice in which direction this cutout is for the bolt, because that'll be the easiest way to line up the new steering shaft. Okay, so there we go. That's in. Let's try to line this up at the bottom now. All right, and now it is cut out in a specific direction, so it's impossible to put it on the wrong way, which is nice because it's easy to line up, but at this point it just needs some persuasion sliding down. All right, there we go. That slid on all the way, which is perfect actually. And now let's get the bolt in. Line it up. Thread it on by hand to begin with to make sure it doesn't cross thread. Once you're sure it's in there, take a 13mm socket. The new one is not a 10 anymore. And let's tighten it up. Okay, I'm going to snug it, and now I'm going to grab my torque wrench. The torque is 22 foot-pounds for this. All right, that's 22 foot-pounds. Get the top reconnected. I'm going to take a wire wheel and gently clean up the end of this steering shaft here so the new one can slide on. As you can see, there's a lot of corrosion and rust built up here, especially right where the split was, where we spread it to loosen it up. You can see there's a, well, maybe you can't see, but I can feel it. There's a pretty significant ridge here, and the new one actually has a split right down the middle, whereas the old one was on the side. So this is going to cause an issue when I try to put the new one back on. It's not going to slide on, basically. So I need to get that cleaned up. I'm also going to apply some anti-seize to this side. Now from the top, grab the steering shaft. And for me, it happens to line up. But if it doesn't, turn the wheels, like the actual wheels, not the steering wheel. And as you can see, this will turn the steering shaft, and you can do this while you're trying to slide it on. And once you get to the right spot, it should slide on all the way, and that's in right there. Let's get the bolt in. This is the bigger of the two bolts. Keep that in mind, not that you can switch them up by accident because they literally won't fit backwards, but thread this in by hand, make sure it's threading in nice and smooth, which it is. And the torque is 35 foot-pounds for this. Now the new bolt is a 17mm socket. Get the socket on there. I'm going to actually torque it through the engine compartment with a long extension because I can get a straight shot at it, and that's important when you torque it. 35 foot-pounds once again. That's it right there. Now with the steering shaft safely reconnected, it's torqued down, it's ready to go, we can untie the steering wheel, remove whatever you used to secure it, and now you can straighten this out and take it for a road test.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.